To the top story this evening, 5 days after RBI Deputy Governor Veeralacharya went public about areas of differences with the government, the centre has issued its first official response. The move comes after sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the government referred to powers under the RBI Act, which have never been used before in the history of India. This for consultations with the central bank, sparking off the current standoff. In its statement, the government said autonomy of the RBI within the framework of the RBI Act is essential, unquote. Sources tell us, and I quote again, that only consultations have taken place under Section 7 and that the government has not issued any directions to the Reserve Bank just yet. Sources also tell CNBC-TV18 that the government referred to Section 7 of the Reserve Bank Act 3 times in letters of consultation on issues ranging from resolution of power sector loans to the central bank's capital reserves. So what exactly is Section 7 of the RBI Act? It reads, and I quote, the central government may give directions to the Reserve Bank as it may consider necessary in the public interest after consultation with the governor, end of quote. The RBI board is set to meet on the 19th of November, where some of these issues may be taken up. Speaking just a short while ago, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said that communications with the RBI are never made public, and he does not wish to add to the government statement that was released earlier today. The Finance Minister was being asked if the government had referred to Section 7 of the RBI Act in its communication with the Reserve Bank, something that the government statement is silent on, and the Finance Minister did not elaborate or clarify either. Listen in.
जो आज हमने बयान दिया है उसके बियॉन्ड मुझे कुछ नहीं कहना। उस बयान में यह भी लिखा है कि जो गवर्नमेंट के और सेंट्रल बैंक के कम्युनिकेशंस होते हैं और जो लेयर्स ऑफ कंसल्टेशन होता है, किस स्तर पे हुआ, कैसे हुआ, किस नेचर का हुआ, इतिहास में तो उसको बाहर कभी नहीं बतलाया जाता। आपका अधिकार है, जब निर्णय होता है उसको जानकारी लेने का, वो आपको बता दिया जाएगा।
Well, that is the Finance Minister saying he does not wish to make any further comments on the current standoff between the government and the RBI. Let's go across to Latha. Latha, now we understand that there have been 3 letters of consultation that refer to Section 7 that were issued by the government to the central bank. What is very clear now, whether you look at the government statement or the comments that have come in from the Finance Minister there, the government is silent on Section 7. They don't say at all whether they referred to it, invoked it, or anything of the sort. What we are given to understand is that this was very clearly referred to, at least in 3 of the letters that the government sent to the Reserve Bank of India, but no direction per se has been issued by the government to the central bank just yet. Now, what is the way forward?
Well, there is no denying that there is a crisis. Never before has that Section 7 been used. And for any governor, if an instruction is given from the government, it would be a matter of great discomfort. It would be disconcerting and difficult to continue. So one can understand the position from which the Reserve Bank governor is coming. Today, that crisis has been papered over, but the positions seem a little intractable. For instance, on capital, the Reserve Bank has always maintained that its capital cannot be taken away summarily by one government. But as experts tell us that, yes, maybe if they appointed an expert committee and discussed it, then perhaps a way can be found to take part of the capital. But it's not a done deal. It's a difficult solution. The other issue on which positions seem pretty intractable is that the government wants that public sector banks be allowed to lend to SMEs. RBI believes that a bunch of them are barely coming out of a very difficult situation, and therefore they don't want them to lend risky loans. And as a regulator, it is their job to do that. After all, they're being pulled up because the previous RBI had not controlled bad lending. So they certainly don't want to be in a position where they want to allow weak banks to lend to weak borrowers. One doesn't know how this position can be changed. Maybe some relaxation can be found. But for the moment, the crisis of a standoff has been papered over, and maybe it is papered over till November 19th, when the next board meeting is to take place. Remember, the government can always have a majority in the board, and the board can force the RBI to do something by passing a resolution. Now, if that is a resolution on capital or relaxation, we don't know how the governor will take it, whether he will take it as Section 7 backdoor or whether he would take it as a challenge to autonomy. For the moment, we have bought peace till November 19th. That is about all we can say.
Okay, at least for now, it looks like, as Latha was pointing out, that there has been a de-escalation, but perhaps the next chapter in this story could be clear on the 19th of November. That is when the Reserve Bank Board will be meeting. Now, reactions have been coming in thick and fast after the government statement on its standoff with the RBI. Former Finance Minister Chidambaram taking to Twitter, he said, and I quote, "Obviously, the government has concealed something. The buzz is that the government has recently written one or more letters to the Reserve Bank," end of quote. He goes on to question the government, saying, and I quote again, "Will the government say whether such letters have been written and whether the letters specifically refer to Section 7 of the RBI Act," end of quote. We spoke to some of the biggest names from the Reserve Bank as well as policymakers on the rift between the government and the RBI. Former RBI Governor Bimal Jalan has welcomed the government statement today, but former Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha says that the possibility of invoking Section 7 will make Governor Urjit Patel's position untenable. We also spoke with the former RBI Deputy Governor S.S. Mundra, and he believes that both parties should sit across the table and have a frank conversation. Here are the big reactions to the big story.
What was going on for the last 2-3 days, that was a matter of concern. And that, I hope now, will start on a new path, as it were.
Okay. Could both sides have de-escalated it even earlier? I mean, you have seen the RBI for, what, 4-5 decades now, sir? Consultation under the Section 7 is avoidable, you thought?
No, but I don't want to comment on that earlier differences of views which emerged, because I don't comment on the RBI and who is wrong, who is right, and so on. But the most important thing is that there was a difference of views, and that was aired in the public and so on, which was a matter of concern. But now that the government has announced that everything is, would be resolved in terms of the two of them, the two institutions talking to each other, that's a very welcome step.
The government understands public interest in its own way. The RBI understands public interest in its own way. There has been no meeting of minds on these issues, and therefore the government is issuing a bland statement of this kind, which means everything to everyone, is not going to help.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, there has been a speculation in the media that the government has issued directives to the RBI, and the government has not yet admitted it. The RBI has not mentioned it. But if indeed such a directive or directives have been issued to the RBI, which has never been done in its long history, then it creates an unprecedented situation. And I personally feel that in this situation, the governor had no option but to resign from his post. Because what the government has done is to express complete lack of confidence in the governor, their own appointee.
The government, sir, has been saying, and this is off record, the government has been maintaining that so far Section 7 of the RBI Act has not been exercised. What do you think is the way forward?
No, why didn't you say it in the statement? Why did they respond to the Economic Times story this morning? Shouldn't they have said it? Shouldn't they have covered it in their statement? Why should they talk about it privately? It's in public domain, and they should have said something about it.
And finally, sir, do you think if Section 7 of the RBI Act is invoked by the central government, the RBI governor's position will become absolutely untenable? Or has it become untenable already?
I have already told you that his position has become untenable already. And if indeed such a directive has been issued, then he should immediately resign.
These issues were in discussion for quite some time. I think, let's say, last few months, one or other issue was under discussion. So now I am trying to build a scenario, assuming that when those kind of discussions, whether they were formal or informal, they were not leading to a communication or a discussion, then probably if there is a thinking that now this is to be taken into a certain direction, then within the framework of Act, until unless give you to a formal shape, because there is a prerequisite of having a consultation, and consultation does not mean that consultation only the party which is starting the consultation, their stand would be a final stand. The essence of consultation is that you start a formal process of consultation. After that, there can be three outcomes. Either you believe the stand of the other party, or your stand is accepted, or the things are still not settled, and the process of consultation may continue.
Okay.
I think these are the three possible outcomes.
Fair enough.
What we are discussing today looks more likely the third situation.
Well, that are the big voices there. Reserve Bank veterans speaking out on the current state of play between the government and the RBI. The government statement today not clarifying whether the centre has referred to Section 7 of the Reserve Bank Act, but stating that RBI's autonomy and independence is important and something that the government respects. Now, India has jumped 23 places in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business rankings. From 100 last year, India's rank comes in at 77. India was at 130 just 2 years ago, and today we've seen a substantial improvement across 6 of the 10 indicators. The biggest jump comes in construction permits, where India has improved 129 spots. Another significant improvement is in trading across borders, where India has jumped 66 places. India's rank has fallen on a couple of parameters like paying taxes and resolving insolvency. Here's the Commerce Minister and the DIPP Secretary on India's performance and the way forward.
There is already a proposal which is already under implementation, wherein we'll be able to do import or export any international trade transaction virtually on your mobile. And that you can imagine what kind of a positive impact it will have, of course, for improving our trade and business, but of course that will again result into ease of doing business improvement.
In the last 2 years, we actually established a hotline with our users and clients. I think that is the best thing that happened. The kind of connect that we have with the stakeholders now. Actually, these reforms are being done in all over the country. So now we have most of the states who are having the similar system.
Okay.
So this is not unique to Delhi and Mumbai. That if you look at the 10 indicators on which World Bank does its ranking, many of those indicators are pan-India. But now the challenge is to get more and more companies to go for reorganization and not liquidation. But right now, unfortunately, more companies are going for liquidation. So that is a trend we hope will be reversed.
In a major blow to the government, the Supreme Court today has asked the centre to submit pricing details of the RAFALE deal in a sealed cover within 10 days. The government stuck to its position, which is that the price of each RAFALE jet is confidential and that it has not even disclosed this information to Parliament. But that didn't cut ice with the apex court. Ashmit joins us now with more. Ashmit, the government trying to convince the court that this was information that it would not like to share in the public domain, and the court basically saying if you cannot share the information in public domain or with the petitioners, share it with us.
Correct. That has been the stance of the Apex Court with the RAFALE deal now under the judicial scanner. Some tough questions being asked. Now, keep in mind that the Apex Court was already seized of the RAFALE issue by way of an earlier PIL that had been filed by ML Sharma. In that case, the Apex Court had sought clarity on procurement procedures, but explicitly had recorded as a part of that order that it was not seeking pricing details. Now, that position as of today stands reversed. Today, it was hearing a PIL that had been filed by the trio of Yashwant Sinha, Arun Shourie as well as Prashant Bhushan. It raised a number of concerns. It had also sought a CBI probe, but given the state of affairs at the CBI, the Apex Court had not seen it fit to pass any orders with respect to a CBI probe. But having said that, the Apex Court said that there have been enough concerns raised for the Apex Court to seek details from the government on pricing as far as this entire transaction is concerned. Now, this was almost immediately opposed by the government. The Attorney General said they hadn't even made those details available to the Parliament. It's covered under the Official Secrets Act. Now, to that, the response of the Chief Justice, Justice Gogoi-led bench, was very curt. The Chief Justice has said, place your objections, if any, on record by way of an affidavit, and then we'll decide on the course of action forward. Moreover, the Apex Court has also directed the government to come forth with details with respect to procurement procedures, with respect to offset partners, and said that those details need to be made available to the petitioners. If they're barred by interests of by national security interests, in that case, the very same documents would then have to be made available to the Apex Court in a sealed cover. So some tough questions being asked. November 14th is the date of next hearing, and perhaps we'll get more clarity on the way forward.
All right, Ashwin, appreciate you joining us. Setback there coming in for the government on the RAFALE deal. Now, the government-appointed board of the debt-ridden island FS has submitted a first-hand assessment of the situation that the company finds itself in. The Uday Kotak-led board tabled the report of the Corporate Affairs Ministry, and the report was also presented to the Company Law Tribunal. Yash standing by with the details. Yash, what is the assessment of the new board?
Well, more or less on the expected lines, the new board of Island FS under the chairmanship of Uday Kotak presented the first-hand assessment report as far as Island FS is concerned. Also, the new board presented a broad revival plan before the National Company Law Tribunal. Some very important figures were clarified before the NCLT today. The Government Council clarified that there are about 347 subsidiaries, SPVs, joint ventures, domestic as well as international, which operate under Island FS. And at the group level, the consolidated point, the debt level stands at about 94,200 crore rupees. As far as the revival plan is concerned, the Government Council clarified that, of course, the new board would be looking at a multi-layer approach. They could explore options at the parent level, which is Island FS, also at the asset as well as the subsidiary and the business level. We'll have to wait and watch in terms of what assets really fall under liquidation, what assets fall under sale, what assets fall under winding up. That, of course, we'll have to wait for further details on that part. But the previous board, the erstwhile board of Island FS, was also not spared as far as today's hearing is concerned. Government Council very categorically stating that there have been specific instances of mismanagement which have been mentioned in the report submitted before the NCLT, and of course further arguments on those instances of mismanagement will also be heard in the next hearing. Some corrective measures also been mentioned before the NCLT today. Of course, these include stricter approvals when it comes to payments, special audit of the previous board to identify instances of mismanagement, and also nominee directors being appointed on boards of total 8 subsidiaries of Island FS, out of which 3 are listed. These include ITNL, Island FS Engineering as well as Island FS Financial Services. Also, the Government Council mentioning that in the next meeting which will take place of the board, 4 more companies will also go through a board change and nominee directors will be appointed on those boards. As far as way forward is concerned, the court has essentially asked to make all the 347 subsidiaries, make them a party to the main petition at NCLT, so that the moratorium period which was granted by the appellate tribunal, the NCLAT, could be expanded as far as these 347 subsidiaries are concerned. Of course, the final approval as far as the execution of the roadmap is concerned, which was presented before NCLT today, the approval for that will only come in the next hearing from NCLT, which will take place on December 3rd.
Thanks, Yash. Staying with corporate news, the Cabinet may take up a proposal to amend the Companies Act when it meets tomorrow. Remember, the Corporate Ministry is seeking to bring about some changes in the Act on the back of recommendations made by a panel headed by the Corporate Affairs Secretary. Timsy joins us now with more. So, Timsy, what are the likely amendments?
Well, what sources are indicating right now is the fact that Cabinet is likely to consider amendments in the Companies Act 2013 tomorrow. What we also pick up from sources is the fact that these amendments will be moved via an ordinance, and that's what the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is been proposing. Some of the key amendments that are likely to come through will be based on the recommendations which were made by the panel for seeking amendments in the Companies Act that was created in July this year and was headed by Company Affairs Secretary Njeti Srinivas. Now, if you see the report that was submitted to the government, to the Minister of Corporate Affairs and Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, it had proposed that to see how they can cap the remuneration of independent directors, also how the roles of directors can be can come into the purview of the government. Also, panel had explored the idea of decriminalizing 83 offences under the Companies Act. So all in, there are a lot of recommendations which were made by the panel. All will be put forward in front of the Cabinet tomorrow for consideration, and let's see what Cabinet finalizes to clear as an immediate need to amend in the Companies Act. Back to you.
Timsy, thanks very much. The government stake sale in Coal India has seen a good response from institutional investors on the first day of the offer for sale, oversubscribed 106%. The 2-day offer for sale will be open to retail investors tomorrow. Remember, this happens to be the government's first OFS this fiscal. Sapna here with more details. Sapna, response on day one and trepidation now for the government was hoping to mop up at least 15,000 crores.
Well, the sense is pretty much clear. 43 or 100 crores on a day when the market was extremely unstable is a pretty good response to the Coal India OFS. Of course, could have been much better, but this is the first cut as of now. It's an evolving situation. We are also given to understand that probably two factors have also had some kind of had some kind of a role. For example, given to understand that probably the FII demand was not too high, and there is also a kind of a liquidity situation in the markets. Otherwise, response from the DIIs would have been much higher. Had all of that happened, the 9% would have been a cakewalk. But we are given to understand that 43 or 100 crores is what the government is mopping up on day one. Retail opens, of course, tomorrow, and still a good buy because there will be a further 5% discount on 266 floor price. Whatever oversubscription the government is getting on the Coal India OFS, of course, that goes straight to the divestment kitty. So it's an evolving situation. Let's keep an eye out for the retail appetite and the retail response that comes in tomorrow.